They all came to say goodbye, but no one expected what the dog would do next. The moment the K9 stepped forward, the entire room held its breath. What followed brought battle-hardened soldiers to their knees. The funeral had started like many others. Rows of folding chairs lined the open field behind the small chapel, and mourners sat quietly, their faces pale beneath the gray sky. The flag-draped coffin stood at the center, guarded by 2 silent Marines. Taps echoed faintly in the background, yet somehow everyone already felt the presence of something different, something heavy, deeper than loss. Standing off to the side, unnoticed by most, was Max, a large, dark-coated German shepherd with intelligent, haunted eyes. He wore no leash, no muzzle, just a black collar with a small silver medallion engraved. K9 Max, service number 8873, partner to SGT. D. Blake. Sergeant Daniel Blake had served 3 tours overseas, and through it all, Max had been by his side. From the dusty roads of Kandahar to the frostbitten peaks of Kosovo, Max had sniffed out explosives, chased down enemies, and shielded his handler more times than anyone could count. He wasn't just a dog. He was a soldier, a brother, a living piece of Daniel's legacy. But now Daniel lay motionless, and Max, for the first time in his life, had no orders to follow. The chaplain began to speak, words about honor, sacrifice, courage, but the words barely registered to those watching Max. His ears twitched, his tail didn't move. He was a statue, except for his eyes, which stayed locked on the flag-covered casket like a soldier waiting for permission to approach. Then something shifted. Max stood ... People turned, some whispered, others reached for tissues. They assumed the handler, seated nearby, would pull him back, but there was no handler. Daniel had been Max's only commander, and without him, Max answered to no one. He began walking forward, step by step, purposeful, silent. The guards didn't stop him. No one did. Max reached the casket. He paused. He lifted his front paws, then, in one fluid motion, leapt onto it. The sound of his body landing was soft, but final. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Gasps. Someone dropped their phone. Max lay down atop the coffin, his nose pressed gently against the flag, his tail curled tightly around his side. His eyes closed. It was as if he knew, as if he understood the weight of the moment. And then, from beneath his collar, something slid free. A small, weathered military medal, the Bronze Star, one Daniel had received 6 months ago. It had gone missing the same week he died. Max had hidden it, and now he let it fall onto the coffin. Thud. The sound was soft, but it hit the crowd like a gunshot. Daniel's father stood up, clutching his chest. A Marine knelt, visibly shaking. The chaplain went silent mid-sentence. No one could explain how Max had taken it, or why, but in that instant, there were no doubts. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't instinct. This was farewell, and yet, this was just the beginning. Because as powerful as this moment was, something even more unbelievable was about to unfold. You see, Max hadn't just lost his partner. He had lost his mission, his sense of purpose. But dogs like Max, they don't just retire. They wait. They remember. They act. And in the days that followed, when the family thought the funeral was behind them, Max would do something no one expected. Something that would send shockwaves through the military community. And something that would uncover a truth. Daniel had died protecting, but that would come later. For now, all anyone could do was watch. Watch this war dog lie silently on a wooden box, draped in red, white, and blue, saying goodbye the only way he knew how. The guards didn't move. The family didn't speak, and Max didn't leave. Minutes passed. Rain began to fall, slowly, softly, still. He lay there, soaked. Steady, loyal, even when the service ended, and the crowd stood, and the casket was ready to be lowered. Max stayed. They would have to lift him, or wait, because Max had made his choice, and no one, not even the general who attended the ceremony, dared to stop him. The sun dipped lower behind the trees, and just before the casket was taken away, Max finally stood. He looked at the crowd, then turned to the horizon, and walked, not randomly, with purpose, because he had somewhere to go, something to do, a promise to keep, and someone to protect. Again, Max didn't return with the family. After the funeral, while mourners gathered around the reception table and quietly passed casseroles and condolences, Max had already disappeared. Some assumed he was resting in a corner of the cemetery. Others thought someone had taken him home early. But as the evening turned cold and guests began to leave, Daniel's younger sister realized something chilling. Where's Max? They searched the chapel, the lot, the fields, nothing. At first, no one panicked. He was a trained K9. He'd be back by morning, but he wasn't. By sunrise, the Blake family was posting flyers. By noon, the local news ran a short segment. Fallen veterans K9 goes missing after heartbreaking. Farewell. Speculation grew. Some believed Max had run off to grieve in solitude. Others feared he'd been stolen, perhaps by someone who knew his value. But no one guessed the truth. Max hadn't gotten lost. He had found a mission. 2 days after the funeral, surveillance footage from Fort Hamilton revealed something extraordinary. Just after midnight, cameras caught a shadowy figure padding along the edge of the base fence, ears alert, tail steady. Max, he'd traveled over 12 miles across highways, backroads, and wooded terrain. No leash, no human guidance. And yet he arrived with precision, right at the gate of the base Daniel had once called home. He sat silently, staring through the steel bars, not barking, not pacing, just waiting. When the guards approached, one recognized him instantly. That's Blake's dog. That's Max. They opened the gate, expecting him to leap into their arms. But Max didn't even flinch. He walked, quietly, deliberately, down the path, past the barracks, into the West Wing, directly to locker 27, Daniel's locker. He sat in front of it and refused to move. 3 hours passed, then 6. Finally, a sergeant fetched the key and slowly opened the door. Inside were Daniel's effects, folded fatigues, a Bronze Star replica, his deployment journal, and something else, a photograph, worn and creased, tucked behind the lining of his helmet case. It showed a village, partially destroyed, with children playing in the background. But the focus wasn't on the scenery, it was on a man. Dark coat, no insignia, civilian, holding a sleek tablet and standing far too close to an active military zone. Max's ears perked, and then he growled, not an angry bark, not confusion. Recognition, a long, deep, soul-rattling growl. Someone rushed to quiet him, but an officer held up her hand. The base commander leaned over it, his expression tightening. The photo this man isn't in any of our field reports. Why had Daniel kept it? Why hide it? And why had Max led them straight to it? The questions multiplied. Max wasn't just mourning, he was warning. In the days that followed, he returned to the locker each morning, at 0600 sharp. He sat in front of it, waiting, watching, By evening, he curled beneath the desk where Daniel used to write mission reports. He didn't eat much, barely, drank, He was searching, One night, an intelligence officer followed Max. After hours, she trailed him through the West Barracks, out a side gate, down a gravel path, to the K9 training yard. There, Max stopped at a corner wall and began digging, fast, focused, desperate. She called for backup, 20 minutes later, a small metal box was uncovered, wrapped in military-grade plastic. Inside, a flash drive, encrypted, unlabeled. The base's cyber team took it immediately. What they found changed everything, because the data didn't just contain logs of Daniel's final mission. It held surveillance footage, secret transmissions, coordinates, and a hidden audio file, Daniel's voice, recorded days before he died. I think I've uncovered something. If anything happens to me, follow Max. He knows. Silence in the room, goosebumps on every arm. Max had been carrying a secret. He wasn't just a war dog. He was a living key, a final message. And now, that message was in the hands of people who finally understood the stakes. The man in the photo, he was flagged, tied to foreign tech firms, suspected of laundering intelligence through 8 organizations. And the location in the background, it matched the GPS ping from Daniel's final coordinates. Where the ambush had occurred, Daniel hadn't just been killed in action. He had been silenced, and Max had come back to speak. The investigation was reopened. The Pentagon was notified. But someone else had noticed the attention, and they weren't happy. Because in less than 72 hours, strange cars began circling the base. Unmarked vehicles, dark-tinted windows. Max noticed them, too. His ears stayed high. His sleep became lighter. His instincts razor-sharp. He wasn't done. Not yet, because Daniel's fight had become his own. And what Max would do next would push him beyond even the limits of his training. It would put his life on the line, but it might also bring justice and expose the truth, the whole truth, the one his best friend had died trying to reveal. Max wasn't just following instinct anymore. He was following a trail, and this time, he wasn't alone. After the flash drive revealed Daniel's final recording, that haunting message, "Follow Max. He knows." A silent alarm had been triggered deep within the command structure. Not everyone trusted the system, and not everyone believed Daniel's death was just bad luck in the field. Within hours, a classified task force was assembled under the radar. No formal badges, no rank spoken out loud, just a shared goal. Major Elena Vaughn, decorated intelligence officer, known for her unshakable intuition, Corporal Miles Duran, cyberops and signals specialist, could pull metadata out of dust. Sergeant Noah Briggs, former K-9 handler and Daniel's closest friend in the unit. And of course, Max. Not just a K-9 now, a witness, a survivor. And possibly the key to uncovering something that had been buried too deep for too long. The team followed Max wherever he led. The first location was unexpected. An abandoned fire watchtower, half collapsed, overrun with vines and rust. Max sniffed around the base, then began circling until he stopped near a patch of disturbed dirt. He barked once, then again. Briggs started digging. Beneath the soil, wrapped in plastic and duct tape, was a scorched military-grade tablet, beyond repair, but the SD slot still intact. Inside, corrupted files, fragments of logs, and an encrypted cache that took Miles 6 hours to partially decode. It referenced a series of shipments marked as medical aid, rerouted through ghost towns in conflict regions. Why would Daniel have tracked that, unless the second location was more dangerous. A condemned warehouse on the edge of town. Max refused to enter at first. He growled, circled, then, tail rigid, he led them to the back entrance. Inside, under years of dust, were crates, not medical. Not labeled, but filled with routers, satellite chips, drone components, all military grade, all missing from inventory reports. Someone had been diverting equipment, laundering it through abandoned aid routes, smuggling tech that could be used for anything: surveillance, attacks, sabotage. Daniel had found the trail, and Max had memorized every scent along the way. But it was what came next that chilled the team. On the fourth day, Max led them to a crumbling shed in the woods outside Grey Ridge, a town Daniel had been stationed near during his last rotation. The air was thick with pine and rot. Max's paws moved carefully, nostrils twitching. He stopped, sat, and stared at the base of a wall. Vaughn tapped the wood, hollow. Briggs pried it open. Behind the panel, a hidden compartment. Inside, a box, wooden, hand-carved, and when they opened it, a letter, addressed to Daniel, unmailed. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, the contents devastating. It was from a civilian translator stationed with Daniel's unit. She claimed she'd overheard a deal, whispered between to contractors on a satellite call. They weren't aid workers, they were brokers, selling American tech and troop routes to the highest bidder. She wanted out. She begged Daniel to help. The letter was dated 2 weeks before Daniel died, and she had vanished without a trace. Now it made sense. Daniel hadn't stumbled into an ambush. He had become a threat, Someone powerful needed him silenced, and Max, he had been there when the truth was buried. The final piece of the puzzle came late that night. A noise outside camp. Briggs grabbed his rifle. Vaughn checked the perimeter monitors. Max stood frozen at the tent's edge, ears perked, tail locked. Then he bolted ... straight into the trees. They chased him over rocks, through thorns, across the ravine. Max didn't stop until he reached the edge of a shallow creek. And lying there, barely breathing, covered in dirt and bruises, was a woman, the same woman from the letter, alive. She had been hiding, on the run, changing locations every week. But Max had her scent, from the envelope, from Daniel's locker. She opened her eyes, and the first words she whispered shattered Briggs completely. Daniel tried to protect me. They knew. They always knew. She passed out from exhaustion. But the evidence was real ... She had a second flash drive. Footage, names, transactions. It all connected. Daniel had discovered a black market pipeline, and he had paid the ultimate price for trying to stop it. But thanks to Max, the trail hadn't gone cold. It was burning. And someone with power, was about to get exposed. But they wouldn't go quietly. Because the next morning, the tent was gone, their gear scattered, their vehicle torched, and Max bleeding, limping, but alive. He had fought something, someone. And as he crawled back to Briggs, dropping a torn piece of fabric at his feet, everyone understood what was coming. The final confrontation. The hunters were now being hunted ... Max had led them this far. But to finish what Daniel started, they'd have to risk everything. At dawn, the forest was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no wind. Just the crackle of ash where their tent had stood. Max sat motionless beside the smoldering remains of their gear, eyes locked on the tree line. His flank was still bleeding, but he didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He waited, because he knew they were still out there. Vaughn patched the woman, Lena, with what little supplies remained. Her pulse was weak but steady. She hadn't spoken since collapsing, but she clutched that second drive to her chest like it was her last breath. Miles managed to salvage a single working satellite transmitter, just enough juice for one encrypted burst. He sent the data, every file, every recording, every transaction, straight to the Pentagon's internal whistleblower line. And then they prepared. They had no weapons except Briggs' sidearm and a hunting knife. No vehicle, no backup. But they had Max, and Max remembered their scent. The one who tried to kill Lena, the one who torched the camp. He would find them, and he wouldn't stop. Briggs leaned in close, hand on Max's collar. "You ready, buddy?" Max didn't bark ... He just stood, then walked ... straight into the woods. They followed him in silence, step by step, until they reached a clearing near the old railway bridge. There, 3 men stood. Black fatigues, tactical gear, no insignias. But Max growled low. One of them stepped forward. His face was familiar. It was the man from the funeral, the one, standing far back, under the tree. Now he was holding a rifle. "You should have stayed buried with him," he sneered. "This doesn't concern you." Briggs didn't blink. "This concerns every one of us who wears the flag right. That flag is just fabric." The man snapped. "The real world runs on power, not symbols." "And what about loyalty?" Briggs asked. "Honor." The man's smile was cold. "Dead concepts, just like your friend." That's when Max leapt. He didn't wait for the shot, didn't hesitate. He launched himself with the fury of every silent moment since Daniel's death. He slammed into the gunman's chest, knocking the weapon aside just as it fired. The bullet grazed Briggs' shoulder. He hit the ground. Hard, blood, noise, screaming. But Max, he didn't let go. Even as the man punched, kicked, clawed, Max held his arm. Jaws locked ... Briggs pulled himself up, raised the sidearm, and fired once. The man crumpled. The others ran. But Vaughn, sharp and focused, flanked left, tackled one to the ground and knocked him cold. With a rock, Miles hit the emergency beacon. And Lena, bruised but alive, whispered one word from where she lay under cover. Justice. Within the hour, helicopters swarmed the sky. Uniforms poured from the trees. The final files were delivered in hand, and arrests began before sundown. A black market tech ring, corrupt officials, civilian contractors working as double agents. It was everything Daniel had tried to warn them about. And Max had made sure the world heard it. But the cost was high. Briggs sat beside Max that night at the field hospital. The dog's side had been stitched, his paw wrapped. He was sedated but breathing. "You did it, boy," Briggs whispered, voice cracking. "You brought him home." The medal ceremony came 2 weeks later, at the same cemetery where it all began. Rows of uniforms stood silent. Daniel's parents held each other. Lena sat beside them, healed but hollow-eyed. The Secretary of Defense pinned a silver star to Daniel's folded flag. But it was what happened next that no one would ever forget. Max, fully recovered, walked forward on his own, no leash. He approached Daniel's grave, then lay down right at the foot of the headstone and howled, just once, low, long, and broken. People wept openly. The secretary removed his cap. So did every soldier in the line, because they knew this wasn't just grief. It was a farewell, but also a promise that as long as Max lived, Daniel's story would not be buried. Briggs knelt beside him, voice trembling. "We'll take it from here, buddy." Max looked up, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt like Daniel was there too.